Welcome back to the Resurgence Athletics Podcast. My name is Dr. Ryan Goodell.
And my name is Dr. Lucas Noguera.
And we're back. We took a little hiatus for the new year, but we're back. And this is podcast 15.
15.
Right, we're on 15 now.
Yep.
We're going to change up this format just a little bit. We're going to be a little bit more broad-reaching. We're going to cover more topics, variety of topics. And if you guys have anything interesting that you want us to talk about, leave it in the comments below and share it with us. Any big goals for 2025?
Can't complain. No. We got a big trip coming up, so we're excited for that. But
Trying to get through the winter here.
Exactly.
I hate the cold.
I know. I got to escape for a little bit,
I need my muscles to loosen up with some heat. The drudgery of winter is upon us now.
Yeah.
But the Super Bowl happened.
Yeah.
You watched
Go
the Super
Birds.
Bowl?
Go Birds. I did watch the.
Yeah. Would have been cool to see the three-peat, but I think, the Eagles well-deserved needed the Super Bowl win. The Eagles have a very impressive team this year.
Yeah.
And did you hear anything about their offensive line?
So I know Saquon Barkley got, best offensive player of the year, and I know their defensive line got, the best this year around too. So
talk about phenomenal physical specimens.
Exactly, yes.
Like, as PTs, we're always analyzing how people are built and stuff, and especially our line with more like athletes and things like that. This is just world record breaking line here, just from a physical standpoint. These are the largest offensive line ever. And the trajectory of NFL players over time has just been astonishing. The speed, the size, just the physicality of the players. And if you look out over time, they're just getting bigger, faster, stronger. Yeah. It's insane. It's like, where's the limit?
Does not exist.
No, it doesn't exist. I think you see that across all sports too, right? Yeah. Like soccer, football, baseball. Like, I've played baseball my whole life and through college, and I just feel like every year in the MLB, you're seeing bigger and bigger guys. Same thing in football. And you see that in the NFL Combine. They're just faster. They jump higher. The game changes.
It does.
It's changed a lot.
It really does, yeah.
And now the linemen are bigger than ever. So just here, the 5 starting linemen on average are about 6'6" and weigh 338 pounds.
Insane.
That's massive.
Yeah. No.
That is massive. And that, by comparison, is 26 pounds heavier. Their counterparts in the Super Bowl, which were the Kansas City Chiefs line. That's just at a certain point.
Disadvantage.
It's if you're just bigger and stronger, you can just overpower people. It's like, that's why there's weight classes in fighting.
Sure.
Right? Like, if you're just bigger, there's not much you can do if you're just smaller. And technique matters to an extent, but at a certain
Still
point,
have that advantage over your opponent.
Yeah. And you actually see that most in youth sports when kids hit different growth spurts at different times and things like that. Like the kids who just hit puberty sooner and they're just bigger, stronger, and faster, they might not even be as skilled. But the fact that they're just larger puts them at a significant advantage. And that does perpetuate, to an extent, even up to the professional levels for certain things. Skill plays a much bigger role in those professional levels, but there is still that foundational, just if you are bigger, faster, and stronger, you have the advantage.
Just to jump off of that too, like my nephew plays, club soccer, and he's at that age where they're getting a little taller. He's 10 years old. Mm-hmm. There's one kid who is just much taller than everyone else. You go in there, the parents are like, "Are you sure this kid's 10?" Like, we're messing around with the roster here, but skill-wise, not the greatest, but he's faster, he's stronger, he can body people off the ball much easier. So it definitely shows how much of an advantage it is to just, be of bigger size on the field, no matter what sport you're playing.
And just as sports have become more advanced too, like those kids just get developed more as, they show promise when they're younger, and that carries even up to the higher levels. Quiz question time. Since 1967, offensive linemen in the Super Bowl were in 1967, were on average 252 pounds. How much do you think they've increased in size since then?
I always overshoot or undershoot by a lot on these questions. So I'm gonna go with the safe place and say 25 pounds.
Word. No.
Not even close.
Not even close.
Of course.
Not even close.
Was I 40 pounds.
We're still way off.
Jeez, how much do they grow? Yeah, no, I got nothing.
So on average offensive lineman now is 325 pounds.
Jeez.
That is a 75-pound jump since about
wild.
Nearly a 5-pound jump since 1967. That's how much difference these players have changed over time.
Yeah.
Since 1967, how many years is that? We got like 33 plus 25. That's 58 years.
Sure.
I'm gonna say that's the math. You guys can fact check me there. Math on the fly. And where does the limit exist? Like,
there's no
how
limit.
big
There's
are
no
people
limit.
gonna
The limit
get?
does not exist, man.
Like, just
at this
bigger
point,
people making bigger people, and then all of a sudden,
where are these stats going to be in 10 years from now?
I think you see that in the NBA too. Like, guys have just gotten bigger and taller. Remember, Yao Ming was like the biggest guy ever, and now he's probably like what, an average NBA player. And athletes just keep getting bigger and more impressive and specific to the sports too.
Yeah.
The attributes that make those athletes good in each sport just keep getting more pronounced.
Sure.
And they turn into these just physical specimens that are just bigger and larger than life. Yeah. It's just really cool to see. But that clearly showed in the Super Bowl. I feel like every play, that offensive lineman was just overpowering
100%.
the other one. And I think part of that is just attributed to that they're bigger.
Yeah.
At the most foundational level, that's what makes an athlete good at what they do to an extent. Other than certain sports that are more skill based.
Yeah.
But in football, size matters.
Yeah.
Especially for linemen.
Oh yeah.
If we're looking at that specifically. It'd be really interesting to see where we were in another 50 years. Do you think average size might cap out at what, 400? Who knows?
I don't know. Like we said, the limit does not exist, at this point.
I mean, I think
75-pound jump in 58 years.
They run what, a 40, and I mean, even if they ran it in like 5 to 6 seconds, 40 yards in 5 to 6 seconds, that's so fast. If somebody that size is running at you, that's terrifying. You wonder why concussions are at
That's why I
all-time
played
highs,
soccer and not
right?
football.
Like, good for the Eagles. Congratulations on the Super Bowl. Go Birds. Switching up to the next topic here. Other news and even athletics. Ice has been a contentious debate again.
Oh, yeah.
You heard about this?
I have, yes.
So there was a book. There was a guy wrote this book called Iced! The illusionary treatment option. Illusionary treatment option. But it did open up the conversation on that typical protocol you see. RICE, right?
Sure.
Rest, ice, compress, elevate. Like, how long is that? I mean, that's been around for
years. I mean, ever since I've been practicing, even growing up playing sports, I remember it was always, I'd go to my athletic trainer and it was, you'd swell up your ankle and it's RICE, So that's been around for quite some time now.
And the specifics on this were, that was introduced in 1978 by Dr. Gabe Mirkin, who had a publication in Sports Medicine book where he introduced that. And he's even had changes to his comments on that over the years. But I was hearing a lot about, maybe we just never ice or like do things like that. Or we have alternatives. Like now we have different acronyms. MEAT. Have you heard the MEAT acronym?
Yep.
Movement, exercise, analgesics or anti-inflammatories, and treatment, whatever treatment means to whoever. And peace, protection and elevation, avoid anti-inflammatories.
I haven't heard this
too.
Okay.
Compression and education. Probably about
education.
Protecting. Education's important.
That's an important one.
Yes.
We like that one.
Be educated. Know more things. That is important. So we have some different approaches, but the general principles are protect it.
Yeah.
And all the other ones are pretty much to modulate the inflammation.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
They're controlling the inflammation. And I think context really matters when we're talking about this because ice and anti-inflammatories and all those things are tools to control inflammation. Control inflammation, I think, is the key.
Yeah.
For minor injuries, and this is what they were talking about specifically, for minor injuries, we might want to reconsider how we use ice and anti-inflammatories. Because if we look at the phases of healing, inflammation is the first phase. We don't get healing if we don't have inflammation. So we need it to an extent. And this is really important. But if we have an over-responsive inflammatory response, as in surgery or a major injury, where there is too much inflammation, that can be detrimental. So if we're talking about the severity of when we're going to use ice and the severity of the injury, mild injuries, maybe we reconsider that. And this is, I think, where that book and that concept of icing probably fits in.
Sure.
I think the majority of people think about injuries in that context.
Yeah.
So there is some education probably to be had in that regard. You want a mild inflammatory response. Mild. Anything more than that, we probably need to control the inflammation more, which is why we have these rules.
Yeah.
Or guidelines.
So, Dr. Ryan, if I go out for a run today and, I twist my ankle or turn my ankle, I go home, it's not too bad. Should I ice it?
And this is where some subjectivity comes in, right?
Okay.
If it's a little mild, it's a little swollen, it's under control, and it's not ballooning, maybe you can just leave it alone. You also want to do your Ottawa ankle rule screen, right? We've talked about this before. We have. Just to know if you need an x-ray or not, that is important. But if it's mild inflammation, you probably can just leave it be.
Okay.
If it's more severe or there's any question of like, whoa, that's really getting puffy, maybe you're probably fine to put ice on it.
Are these controlling the swelling? Right?
Are these things going to make or break the long-term outcomes? It's probably not going to be the determining factor, but initially it might have an effect.
Yeah. Agreed.
I mean, we see things all the time, like post-surgical or when there's a traumatic incident or like, when there's a break of a bone that needs internal fixation. Those things have massive inflammatory responses. And even the person that has that procedure, it depends a ton. You're definitely going to want some type of like anti-inflammatory or ice to modulate that amount of inflammation. Heck, I remember a specific case. There's someone who had gotten run over by a car. Yeah. And there was so much inflammation in the leg that they couldn't approximate the edges of the wound. So they actually ended up taking a skin graft and putting it inside of the wound to let it heal. And in the interim, our job as the physical therapist was to do a lymphatic massage on the leg multiple times per week. Yeah. And the surgeon had given us instructions, or the plastic surgeon had given us instructions that once the edges of the wound could approximate to about a centimeter apart, so we were measuring it every day. Sure. They said, send them back. And then they came in the next week. I couldn't even tell that had ever been there. It was incredible. Wow. So surgeons can do some amazing things. But in that instance, that's an over-responsive inflammatory consideration. And there was a lot of that needed to be addressed with manual therapies, icing, compression garments, anti-inflammatories, just the gambit of things to control the inflammation. So I think that's really important. And I like that this was a conversation of topic. And there were all sorts of articles. Does cryotherapy improve outcomes with soft tissue injuries? Cryotherapy this, cryotherapy that. Ice and heat are good tools. I think they're low entry tools. I think, they're not super expensive.
Sure, easy accessible.
They're easily accessible for people, but knowing how and when to use them is important too. And you got any more thoughts on that?
No, I think I agree with all those points. I've had, like I said, I played soccer and had plenty of ankle injuries, and some of them which are more significant than others, especially when, kind of what Dr. Ryan said, when it blows up into a balloon, like I'm icing it. I'm a little more old school, I think, with that. I do think that ice helps and it has a time and place. I don't think it's going to change the entire healing process, but it will definitely play a factor in, containing the swelling and also just for pain modulation as well. Like some of these my ankle injuries are quite painful. And if the ice is helping you on both ends there, that could definitely serve as a beneficial aspect.
if you're interested in that topic, there's plenty of stuff out there you can take a look at.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opinions out there, but those are ours. Let us know what you think in the comments below. But that's typically how we approach people who present with those types of injuries. I'd say that those are our general guidelines and recommendations. And then in other surgery healthcare news, we have breaking new spine surgery updates. This is new. I saw this article. I believe it was actually in the Barron's magazine or article that came across my feed. There's a new spine procedure out there, and we've heard a lot about spine fusions, and those have been around for a long time. They've definitely gotten better over the years, but there's a new one, TOPS surgery, which stands for total posterior spine surgery. And this has been around for a couple of years now, but it hasn't been widely used.
Yeah.
But it is another version of a fusion.
Okay.
Which seems to have some type of like articulating mobility aspect to it. I was looking through the FDA.gov website on this, and it appears that there's some parameters that people would need to qualify to have this, but specifically from the FDA website, which is when is it used?
Yeah.
The general guidelines right now are between the ages of 35 and 80. So that's a huge range.
Big range, yeah.
With degenerative spondylolisthesis up to grade 1. So that's very low grade.
Okay, yeah. That's the lowest grade.
The lowest grade. So the more severe ones, I guess, you're excluded.
Okay.
And specifically at the levels of your lumbar level 3 to 5. So those are your bottom part of your low back.
So again,
in that you need to have moderate to severe narrowing of the lumbar spine, or like spinal stenosis, where it's like kind of compressing down.
Yep.
And either the thickness of the ligaments that support your spine in those areas need to be thickened to an extent, trying to accomplish the same thing that fusion's doing.
Yeah.
Which, they've been fine. Fusions have been fine. Many cases they're not successful.
Yeah.
Some I've seen them do amazing things for people. I've seen them do neutral to nothing for some people. In certain indications, they're warranted.
Yeah.
One of the most significant ones I think would be like traumatic injuries, like car accidents and things like that.
Work-related injuries, like falling off a ladder.
Yeah, I would say where they shine is probably those types of things. Yeah. But staying in that same vein of fusions, the reason why fusions typically don't do as well is because a lot of back problems are habitual in nature, right? So, and that's all types of back issues
100%.
Outside of like the weird ones. But how we move affects our back mechanics, and our back mechanics will make us hurt or make us not, right? Mechanical back pain, right? And that's why these low back surgeries have such varying outcomes, because our movement habits and how we move play a role in how our back's going to feel.
Yeah.
And so if we never address those in the first place, and you just get a surgery and you never address your habits, you're going to still have problems, and that thing's going to wear out eventually.
100%.
So if you do end up getting some type of surgical procedure, you have to address the habits. What I like about this TOPS system is it seems to have more variability, saves some of the mobility at those levels. Yeah. Because when you fuse somebody, that's gone.
They lose forever, all the movement in those segments, and they're just using everything above and below. Yeah. And then that's when the pain.
Over time?
Exactly.
What happens over time?
Comes
you get the fusion, and then what happens?
You have like degeneration of the levels above, below, and then you're a candidate once again for a multi-level fusion. So this is the one thing that I did like about this, that it seems like the movement is spared to an extent, where unlike, most fusions, you lose that movement. And like you said, over time, everything goes back downhill.
Yeah, they call that adjacent disc disease.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
We don't like that.
No.
We don't like
Plus,
that.
when you fuse things down, then you like lose the rotation and the mobility, and then, if you're an avid golfer or something, you can't get that rotation through.
If you do anything in life, you can't move as well.
I don't like that.
When should this not be used? Like, when is it warranted I mean, we talked about when it is warranted, but who does not fit the criteria? When should we really stay away from it? What kind of like pathologies?
Yeah, just the list of things. There's a lot of things that exclude you from this surgery. I mean, just one being the grade 1 spondylolisthesis. Yeah. Many people have a grade 1 spondylolisthesis and they're walking around the world. Would never know.
Yeah. But many respond very well to conservative treatment, right?
Yeah, with spondylolisthesis.
So many times.
Almost, I'm looking at the uses for this, and the things that would qualify you for this would respond well to conservative treatment anyways. Yeah. So I'm curious to see where this goes, and we're definitely going to keep an eye on it. I think they've only done this on less than 4,000 people so far. So the sample size of people still needs to increase drastically. Sure. But kind of in synopsis of the TOPS surgery, there's a lot of exclusions. And you have to be within a very narrow window of like things that would make you, or criteria that would make you a candidate for this surgery. You know, that 35 to 80 years of age, degenerative spondylolisthesis from like 0 to grade 1, which is, very minimal window. That's hard to just catch in general. Yeah. And then only at the lumbar levels 3 to 5. So that kind of restricts people down. But that gets us to our next segment here. New segment on the podcast called What's That on the Internet? Where we're going to react to things relative to PT, health, fitness, and sports. Right. So I'm going to show Lucas a little video here, and we're going to see what he thinks about it. I'm going to say we're going to label this hamstring strength. Okay. And we're going to see what you think about this.
What are we in for?
All right, here we go. We got here some acrobatic stuff.
What's even going on here?
I'm curious as to
how is this guy doing this?
At what point are you like, you know what we need to be doing? This.
My hamstrings are cramping right now just watching this. This is not.
If we attempted this right now, I think we might be walking to the ER afterwards.
Yeah, 100%.
My hamstring rupture right away.
The strength on this guy is insane.
I mean, this is the goal eventually.
What happened to normal hamstring exercises? You know,
I mean, we went from Nordic hamstrings to this. I don't even know if this classifies as a Nordic hamstring anymore. Like, what is this?
I don't even know.
If you have to name this, what are we naming this? Man curls, hamstring man curls here. Is that, like,
good for this guy, but I could never. That is like insane.
Hamstring strength to the next level. Guinness Book of World Records.
100%.
Hamstring 100%. Strength here. So if anybody else is out there doing this, I want to know, because you need to be put into a study, and we can study your hamstrings, because that is wild.
That's ultimate strength right there.
That's more impressive than any strongman competition I could ever see. This needs to be in the Olympics. Human curling with your hamstrings.
Human Nordic curls.
Just throw out the Olympic weightlifting. We're just doing this now. Just putting stacks of weights that you have to hamstring curl.
Oh, jeez. That is.
But even more impressive to be doing a handstand on top.
Impressive.
Wow. Doing the Nordic hamstring. Human hamstring curls.
Whatever we're calling it at this point.
That's that thing. Yep. So if you guys have any other videos that you'd like us to respond and react to, please share, because I love seeing what's out there on the internet. And every week I am surprised with what I find in the zeitgeist of health, fitness, sports.
There's something new that every day.
Yeah. If there's a way that people can do it, they're going to figure it out.
Find it.
Oh, yeah. And
have you been to your local gym anytime?
Yeah. If there's a way you can hurt yourself, I mean, that's why there's so many OSHA rules. Yeah. And why there's got to be rules in warning labels on all the things at the gym, even down to a 5-pound dumbbell. There needs to come a warning label. So don't do dumb things at the gym.
Yes.
Please.
And don't try any of these crazy stunts at home.
We're more than happy to see you if you do it yourself. But,
come on.
Try not to.
Here's a business card.
Yeah. Try not to do something outlandish. I like the standard injuries instead of like.
We like being healthy.
Yeah. Instead of the weird ones. But that's it for today's episode. That was podcast 15. We talked about ice. We talked about the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl victory, TOPS surgery, the new spine surgery out there, and we learned a new hamstring exercise.
Yeah.
So tune in next time. I will not be
trying it.
Like, comment, subscribe, share.
Click all the buttons.
Wherever platform you are watching us on or listening to us. follow along, and we will see you next time.